So many people come up to me because I've been so open about having cancer, and they say, my sister had breast cancer, and so I understand. And I'm like, is she okay? She got through it. It did come back 2 years later, and she didn't make it. I keep hearing this 2 years it came back, 2 years it came back. And so I have this fear that it's gonna come back. I'm trying to live my life as if, I only had 2.
In honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, this episode is made possible with the support of Spring Health. Can you just start by talking about how you're feeling right now?
I'm feeling a bit raw. I have not had a lot of human interaction like this from the pandemic, and especially face-to-face in real life, deep conversations about what I've been feeling for the last few years. I know this is going to be a heavy conversation, but I'm ready for it.
So can you talk a little bit about what your style says about you?
I feel very sentimental about my childhood. In the 90s, I was a teenager. My sister and I were homeschooled, and my mom was very religious. She was a Jehovah's Witness. My only way of knowing what fashion was at the time was to, when my parents weren't home, like sneak watching my so-called life. I feel like I'm sort of taking control of the way I wish that I could have dressed when I was a teen, and just doing it now. And I'm getting rid of everything that I owned before. All of this has been purchased in the last week. I just don't want to see anything that had to do with my life before cancer and before pandemic and before all these new feelings and feeling like a brand new person.
So can you talk about assumptions that people make about you based on your appearance?
What I hope is that they see an approachable person that they would like to hang out with. I feel like I'm not ever trying to be sexy looking. Well, when I was homeschooled for so long, it was 5th grade through 11th grade. So pretty formative times. When you're a Jehovah's Witness, you're only allowed to hang out with other Jehovah's Witnesses. And if you're talking to anyone that's not, they're considered worldly, you're supposed to just be kind of preaching to them. And then I went to my senior year in high school. I was so excited to be social, and the first day of school I got beat up because I was talking to some girl's boyfriend. And I figured out that the best way to get girls to like me at the time was to not dress sexy. And so I think I perhaps carried that over to now. I don't intimidate anyone with the way that I look. I want to feel inviting as a person.
What would you say is a biggest insecurity that you have worked on overcoming, or that you have overcome?
Not knowing how to express myself. My natural instinct is to be defensive a lot, as one does when they feel like their character is I've misunderstood. Like an insecurity that I have now that I've worked through quarantine with my therapist is I feel like I lost my edge with cancer. Being in control and like dance captain and like in charge of things and have a vision, and I don't have that anymore. Through some very beautiful conversations I had with her, she's like, don't you think that your edge now is the fact that you don't have to put walls up and you don't have to be in control, and that's not edge, that actually this is edge now. I also suffer with misophonia, which is an audio sensitivity disorder where you hate specific sounds. Mine is gum chewing or any kind of mouth sounds, the sounds of kissing even. It's a fight or flight mode, and I've had it my whole life. It comes from trauma. Like I was raped when I was 13 in the back of a car, and the guy was chewing gum and it was in my ear. I'm pretty sure I had misophonia before that, but that just kind of amplified it. I just felt so low, and I did try to take my life. I just wanted to stop all the chaos in my head and all the overthinking. And even in that moment, I just couldn't. So really trying to go from someone that was ready to take her own life from feeling so misunderstood to then fighting for my life when being diagnosed with cancer. I've been doing so much deep work on healing myself.
Can you talk like about the moment you got diagnosed and like take us through the beginning of that journey?
My boyfriend had felt a lump because sometimes I'd be like, God, a breast massage feels so good. And so he'd be like rubbing the spot and I'm like, oh, like drool because it felt so good to be massaged. And he's like, it feels like a lump. And when I went to the doctor for a cold, while I was there, I was like, oh yeah, by the way, like there's this like lump. And the doctor was like, do you have your period recently? Yeah, it's that. All women have lumps in their breasts, and didn't even feel it. And then cut to a year later, I'm at my OBGYN getting a pap smear and she's going like this and she's pausing in that area and I was like, no. And then she's like, this is something. And she did the ultrasound on it and immediately said, you need to go to get a biopsy. I had an audition where I had to play a stripper. You have to say, like, are you willing to be topless for the role? And I said, yes. But this whole time I'm like, I have a huge bruise right here and I don't know if I'm even gonna have the breast. And I did the audition and then went to go to Cedars. I brought a friend. The minute the doctor walked in, she was like, I'm so glad you brought a friend because yeah, it's cancer. Like she just got right into it. Obviously immediately bawling and it's interesting in like movies and television when the artistic choice is to have like womp 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 womp, like you can't hear anything else after that and you're getting all this information. That's what it's like. I don't remember anything. They were able to see that the size was 4.5 and a 5 is like stage 3, so I was stage 2B. I was pretty close to stage 3. And they said, you have the BRCA gene, and I hadn't talked to my mom since 2016 when Trump was elected, and she's like, you're gonna have to call your mom, have your mom get a blood test. So it was a really weird moment to speak to my mom for the first time in 3 years, and because I had BRCA, I'm gonna get them both off because the chances are. So it's like, can I still breastfeed? And they said no, and I cried so hard. That to me was almost worse than hearing I was gonna lose my breast because I've always had this vision of having this bonding moment. I just thought it would be such a beautiful moment, and even hearing that I can't do that with a future child, I don't know, I just felt so crushed. I'm 39, and so my eggs are already in a certain state, so they were like, you're gonna wanna pull some eggs before chemo because chemo ages your eggs by 10 years. I was under so much stress though that I only got 1 egg per surgery. I'm like, what the fuck? Like I've had friends that got 30 eggs. Obviously you're stripped from so much when you are diagnosed with breast cancer specifically, to even just lose your breast. I thought my breast was like my thing. Like I loved the shape of them, and they were small and they were a handful, but they were, in my mind, they were perfect. So I loved unbuttoning my shirts to reveal them. Was like, I would like masturbate to that thought. And to have the person be like, whoa, like those are perfect. Like that was my sex dream. So that being taken, like having the thing that I thought was my, taken away. And so I was told I could either get implants. I said I wanted to go flat, because I was like, if it's either jugs or flat, I'd rather flat. And my doctor was like, if you really want to go flat, I'm gonna leave skin though, because if you change your mind, so you'll have like little Sherpa, like saggy skin for a while. And I was like, that sucks. And so I chose implants, and I hated my body with them. I hated that. I felt like I was a sex robot. I felt like none of my clothes fit the same. It was always in the way of sleep, and dance was different. And even going to the beach and wearing a bikini, like having these like shiny circles, I was like embarrassed by them. I'm like, oh, I don't want anyone to think that I'm this person that like wanted a perfect circle orb, I would call them. Then I've had so many reconstructive surgeries trying to figure out how to make them in a way that I could live with them. So I've had 4 reconstructive surgeries in 2 years. It is an option to only use fat to make your breast, and I feel like women should know that.
Do you ever just honor like how strong you are?
I don't know if I would say I've honored myself, but I can acknowledge that sharing and being so transparent about my cancer experience has helped a lot of women, but it also helped me. So in my mind, that wasn't brave. It was like what saved me in that time. Being full transparent about the ups and downs of breast cancer and trying to get through it with as much joy as possible. I think that that's brave, taking away what made you feel the most feminine, taking away something that represents motherhood, taking away the pleasure of sex, taking away even friendships. I've lost friendships. I've lost my hair. In order to get through a lot of this was ritual. Before I lost my ovaries, I had another group of women, and we all sat in a circle, and everyone came up and whispered something to my ovaries, and like something to my future child someday. And it's things like that made me feel way more prepared for the high dive of these big surgeries or these big losses. One of the things I asked my friends to do the day that I got my ovaries out was like I came up with a little dance, and I had a kind of like in the OA how they had that dance that they did. So I came up with something and was like, everybody at 10 o'clock do this dance. And they did, and I swear I felt it. Just things like that made me feel in control. It made me feel in control and connected with a higher purpose.
Surrendered.
Yeah, exactly.
Earlier you talked about the switch from wanting to take your life to like fighting for your life. Was that something that you were like conscious of?
I had already wanted to live when I was diagnosed, so it wasn't like I was still contemplating taking my life or not. So many people come up to me because I've been so open about having cancer, and they say, my sister had breast cancer, and so I understand. And I'm like, is she okay? She got through it. It did come back 2 years later, and she didn't make it. I keep hearing this 2 years it came back, 2 years it came back. And so I have this fear that it's gonna come back, and I'm trying to live my life as if, I only had 2. If I found out I was dying tomorrow, what will I wish I have done? And I know that it would not be like, didn't talk to mom that whole time, like set that firm boundary. Like it would be to connect with her as much as I possibly can, trying to understand each other and kind of like heal instead of bury. And so it's like my focus is like rebuilding my relationship with my mom and my family. And I also want to travel a lot. I want to like see the world.
When do you feel the most vulnerable?
I feel vulnerable so much. I feel vulnerable taking off my clothes. Felt vulnerable speaking to you guys about all of this. I felt really vulnerable. I don't know when I'm the most vulnerable because I constantly feel like I am.
When was the last time you cried? Other than today?
Last night with a friend talking about the bra. Talking with my friend about how I'm going to be taking off my clothes and just kind of sitting here in a very exposed way, and how that made me feel so many different kinds of things. And so that's the last time I cried, was just talking about today and this interview and this moment.
When do you feel the most beautiful?
I feel most beautiful when I'm dancing. I feel the most free when I'm dancing. I feel the most me. What's beautiful is the way your body chooses to move is, to me, the most magical thing. Once you're finally let go of what it looks like and how silly you might feel, or like to go full out and like just go for it, is when I feel the most beautiful.
Last question. Why in your body, in your skin, in your journey, why is it a good place to be?
Feeling like, you go on a roller coaster, and then like you're done, and like you come back and you're like waiting, and you're waiting to get off of it, but like that feeling, that's something to live for. Is like that feeling of like, whoa, I got through it, and I kind of want to go again. And I think surrendering is the biggest thing that I've learned through my whole entire diagnosis. Is you can't stress and overthink so much. These things are going to happen anyway, and you just kind of don't waste your brain real estate on the stress. Just surrender and trust, and know that this is for a reason. Every encounter you have is for a reason. And I think that's an exciting way to live life.
Thank you so much. That was just absolutely like a gift.
How do you feel now that you've revealed what you were nervous about body-wise and everything?
I feel like a cartwheel. I feel like I feel really excited. I feel relieved, and I feel like, yeah, I feel way different than I did on the drive over here where I was so nervous. So I'm very grateful.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of What's Underneath, made possible with the support of Spring Health.
Follow us along on Instagram at StyleLikeU and at spring.health for more details on how you can join in on our mental health awareness campaign. We also want to extend a big thank you to True & Co. for co-sponsoring this episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel over here.
And don't forget to ring the bell so that you're notified every time we release a new video on Thursdays. Lots of love.